The year is 1990. 32-bit computers had become the norm in no small part due to the rise to prominence of Intel 8088's powered computers. They were met with solid approval from businesses, computer enthusiasts, and home users alike, as Intel's annual reports from 1989 and 1990 detail a steady incline in 32-bit computer adoption since the inception of the first publicly available 386 computer in 1986. It should also be noted that the 386 was viewed by many as a major improvement compared to its predecessors, and subsequently a milestone so important that the popular term i386 had become nearly synonymous with 32-bit x86 software over the years. In the same year, Microsoft released Windows 3.0, a major overhaul of the software giant's operating system. Not only was it significantly easier to use compared to previous Windows iterations, but it was also built to take full advantage of the 386's features.
Right now, Windows has three modes. We have the real mode, the standard mode, and the enhanced mode. In setup, it's determined what type from your machine requirements you would have. The real mode is for downward compatibility with 2.x. It will run applications that aren't Windows 3 ready. It is also for machines with less than 1 megabytes of memory. The standard mode uses the protected environment of the 2 and 386 for 1 megabyte and greater machines. And the enhanced mode, the 386 enhanced mode, will use the virtual memory management of the 386 to virtualize the memory for more memory, and also for the standard DOS applications can run in the virtual 86 mode.
The improved memory management capabilities found in the 386 made Windows 3.0 faster to use than its predecessors and aided in its overall success.
We brought out Windows version 3 over 18 months ago, and it's really amazing that over 5 million copies have been sold. Windows version 3 was a breakthrough because it eliminated the memory barriers that Windows had had in the past. And with this success, we now have all the major software companies focusing their development work on writing Windows applications.
Despite all of this, Microsoft, in a continued effort to expand its market share, continued to support Windows on the aging 8088 processor, version 3.0 being the last release supported. The question that we have to ask ourselves now is this: with the vast improvements gained from using Windows 3.0 on a 386 processor, is it worth using at all on the 8088? One of the most popular 8088 powered machines out there is the IBM XT, which is emulated by 86box and has been showcased in many of our videos. A period-accurate IBM XT, at the very least in 1986, consists of a few key components: an Intel 8088 processor clocked at 4.77 MHz, 640 kilobytes of RAM, and a 20 megabyte hard drive. Unfortunately, on systems with such limitations, we're able to run Windows 3.0 only in monochrome using the Hercules display adapter. EGA simply doesn't work because its drivers require at least a 286 to function. On the other hand, CGA works just fine, but I don't know how I would feel using an interface so destroyed by such an antiquated video card that the display output looks like the contents of an office trash can left out in the rain for weeks on end. Apart from that, we'll be using a Microsoft Serial Mouse, an IBM PC fixed disk adapter as the hard drive controller, because it just works, and the DTK PII-151B as a floppy drive controller to enable full support for 3.5-inch floppy disks. The real-time clock is optional, but we'll include it anyway. Just make sure to follow our tutorial to set it up, link in the description. Our machine preparation ritual remains largely unchanged. Insert an MS-DOS 3.31 boot disk, prepare the hard drive using F-disk, format it using format C:/S, which is going to take quite a while due to how slow the 8088 is, and configure the RTC. Now that our machine is ready, we can begin installing Windows. So far, nothing is out of the ordinary other than the occasional but expected slugginess of the machine. In most cases, setup will correctly detect your hardware as shown here, so there's no need to modify anything. When setup starts copying files to the hard drive, you will slowly realize why this was never going to be a good idea in the first place. The file copying process is unbearably time-consuming, in no small part due to the dated 4.77 MHz processor operating at a snail's pace. This was one of the ways Microsoft had begun to build their image around backwards compatibility, both hardware and software-wise. They released Windows 3.0 with 8088 support, seemingly regardless of its performance on what was by now a decade-old platform. Analyzing the footage for this video reveals that the installation took approximately 23 minutes. And to put into perspective how terribly long the installation process is overall, the time it took to install Windows 3.0 on a much more powerful 386DX processor was only 6 minutes. After what any sane person would consider a long wait, we reach this screen where setup offers to modify our startup files. Feel free to let it do its thing, as it will not change anything we've had configured for the RTC. And we're done. Wow, this looks quite interesting. When installed on anything prior to the 80286, Windows 3.0 runs exclusively in Real Mode, the basic 16-bit operation mode that all x86 processors are capable of utilizing. Real Mode support was eventually dropped early into Windows 3.1 development, effectively requiring an upgrade to a 286 processor or higher. But apart from that, Windows 3.0 in monochrome is interesting, to say the least. Nothing looks fundamentally different, but seeing a Windows version newer than the likes of version 2.x run in anything but color feels undoubtedly anachronistic. Included applications such as Write, Paintbrush, File Manager, Card File, and others are still largely usable despite the increased load times induced by our aging CPU. Let's try some games, like Reversi for example. The game hasn't changed at all since its introduction in Windows 1.0 DR5, and as per usual on monochrome display adapters, it's either black or white. The game's noticeable slowness, caused in no small part by the CPU and display adapter, instills you with a strange sentiment of anticipation every time you make a move, but that's just me. Moving on to Solitaire, everyone's favorite card game, and things go downhill rather fast. Solitaire is not a game necessarily intended to be played in monochrome due to card colors, namely the heart and diamond being red and the club and spade being black. If you were already aware of this, however, then the game is playable, to an extent. Because Solitaire tends to be rather graphically intensive by that period's standards, you should be prepared to deal with some sluggishness while moving the cards around. And keep in mind, we're dealing with essentially a 5 MHz processor in a time where CPUs with 5 times the clock speed were already the norm.
This thing is still running, by the way, Jan. You know, we're still watching the slower version, NXT, if you will,
right.
Trying to still do those recalculations. It still says wait, wait, wait.
So I think we'll start seeing those.
What do you know? It done it. It did it. And on my watch, it took 2 minutes and 17 seconds for it to do what took 16 seconds when you were running it with the 386 chip.
Yeah, about 8.5 times longer.
Pretty impressive. Thank you very much.
Generally, no sane individual or business would install an operating system on their computer without also installing the required third-party software that enables them to carry out their daily tasks. I'm not ruling out the possibility that some people, whoever they might be out there, may be able to use only what's included with Windows, but the overwhelming majority of computer users will always install extra software on their computers. In that regard, it's time to see if Windows 3.0 on an 8088 is business ready. Our first piece of software laid out on the table today is a word processor, specifically Microsoft Word for Windows version 1.1. This was one of many built specifically for Windows version 2.x, albeit not limiting its compatibility with newer versions, but not offering any quality of life features specific to Windows 3.x, such as automatically creating a program group and program manager for said software. The setup program is purely text-based, as was the norm with programs of that era. Alongside that is Excel version 2.1, also tailored for Windows 2.x and previously featured in our Windows 2.11 video. The setup program is also text-based, this time slightly more reminiscent of that of Windows 2.x. Both Microsoft Word 1.1 and Excel 2.1, developed in roughly the same era and tailored for the same Windows iteration, function properly if you can get past the horrific speed, or lack thereof, of the 8088 processor. But what if, after writing countless letters and memos to various companies and organizing data for various expenses for the month, You needed something to do to relax. We're past Reversi and Solitaire at this point. We're in need of a breath of fresh air. You just want to start up a game and lose yourself in it for 15 minutes or so, until the 9-to-5 life calls to you again. Enter the Windows Entertainment Pack, a critically acclaimed game compilation released by Microsoft in 1990, not long after Windows 3.0, including timeless gems like Tetris, Minesweeper, and Mahjong under the name Taipei. Results with the Entertainment Pack on the dated hardware we're emulating are, at best, unfavorable. Tetris performs acceptably, but is visibly hampered by the dated Hercules card, as it can only redraw the blocks as they are progressively falling to the ground. Minesweeper, on the other hand, doesn't work. Not only that, but it rendered the machine unresponsive. Fortunately, it's not something a Control-Alt-Delete can't fix. Cruel and Golf, the two card games included in this package, appear to work as intended. So far, there have been 0 issues regarding card games on this machine, other than the fact that, monochrome. And this is as far as it goes with the games that actually function on this machine. The next 4 games in this package simply do not work on an 8088 and will hang your system. Tic Tactics, a game that can be quintessentially described as tic-tac-toe on steroids and beyond, fails to launch in such a way that the machine as a whole becomes completely unresponsive. That's right, even Control-Alt-Delete is useless here. Taipei, the Mahjong game in this package, also refuses to launch. The same goes for our screensaver collection app, Idlewild, with some very interesting results here. And finally, Pegged, which is Peg Solitaire. No luck getting that to run at all. Out of 8 apps comprising the Windows Entertainment Pack, only 3 of them even start. Out of curiosity, I decided to go back and experiment further by attempting to install the versions of Word and Excel I had used in the 30th anniversary special Windows 3.0 video, which were Word 2.0C and Excel 4.0A. I'm not exactly sure what to expect from either of them, but let's give Word a try. Wow. Seriously? Honestly, I'm not even surprised. So, this is what happened when I tried to install either Word 2.0C or Excel 4.0A on this machine. This application requires standard or enhanced mode windows. It appears that, judging from this error message, they would require a 286 processor or higher to run. I think this error message explains everything we needed to know about the future of the 8088 platform in an era where much more capable processors had gained considerable ground. It would be only a matter of time before Microsoft realized that developing for an aging platform that slowly fell into disuse over the years was a waste of their resources, and they eventually pulled the plug on 8088 and real mode support, reportedly early into Windows 3.1's development, much to their advantage. So, what can we learn from Windows 3.0's less than ideal support for 8088? It's important to note that we were already limited by the lack of EGA support on 8088, and by extension, several apps expressing their incompatibility in 2 ways. The first and much tamer option, as we just saw, was a non-lethal error message stating the need for standard or enhanced mode windows, which, as you may already know, is code for upgrade to 286 or higher. The second and more brutal option was to cause a system-wide hang with no warning, although not an intended side effect by the developers. This all comes down to technology evolving at an exponential rate once the likes of the 486 and Pentium had arrived on the market. Once Microsoft realized it no longer made sense to continue developing for a dated platform such as 8088, They had no choice but to leave it behind if they truly wanted to progress. 286 was eventually kicked to the curb when Windows for Workgroups 3.11 arrived, dropping standard mode support and raising the processor requirement to a 386. One major lesson to learn from all of this is that technology has always been rapidly evolving, and ultimately, it's your choice to move forward with it or get left behind in the process. And such was the end of Windows on 8088. Hey everyone, DDX from 86bucks here. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is very different from what I usually upload on the channel, which is partially why it took so long to make. But if you like this new genre of videos and want to see more, feel free to give this video a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I would also like to thank the amazing supporters over on Patreon, which is where you can support this project. Thank you to Marcus and StasBFG for currently pledging €10 a month. Your support is always appreciated. For more ways to support 86bucks and interact with our community, feel free to check out our links down below, Twitter, Discord, etc. And if you want to support me personally, feel free to check out my work at ddxofficial.com. Once again, thank you for watching, and as always, happy emulation.